functions are implemented. So, good morning. It's great to be here at EdCon. So, over the last couple of days, I've had the opportunity to talk to a bunch of great developers working in native blockchain organizations. And really, one of the recurring themes has been the excitement at the pace of change and growth and adoption we've seen in Ethereum and other blockchain technologies over the last 18 months. And a lot of that has been driven by the by the issuing of tokens, which has obviously allowed organizations to fundraise and also importantly build communities and network effects around their product. So what I want to talk about today is some of the challenges and opportunities of how we continue that pace of growth and adoption over the next 1 to 2 years, in particular as more traditional companies get comfortable with blockchain technology and want to enter the space, and as regulators start to engage more seriously with blockchains and public ledgers. So I want to start by just touching on some of the differences between utility tokens and security tokens. So a utility token, which is largely what we've seen being issued over the last 18 months, entitle the token holder usually to some access to a protocol or to a service. So that they're purchasing this access. And they're not really seen as investments, and as such, the sale and transfer of these types of tokens is not highly regulated. Conversely, security tokens represent some ownership of a real-world off-chain assets, maybe fractional ownership in real estate or in a venture fund, and the people purchasing these types of tokens are really doing so as an investment with some sort of expectation of profit or return. And therefore, the sale and the transfer of these tokens in the secondary markets are regulated in much the same way as traditional securities are regulated, which means broadly highly regulated. So, we've seen how the ERC20 specification or standard has really fueled this growth in the token ecosystem. Allows wallets and exchanges and various other third parties to interact with tokens in a uniform way and fuel that growth and adoption. But for security tokens, there are a couple of areas where ERC20 lacks a little bit of clarity and could do with some improvement. So what are those areas? So there's two key areas we see as needing a little bit more specification. The first is related to transfer restrictions. So, broadly with a ERC20 token, if you have enough balance, you can transfer that token in a peer-to-peer fashion, usually without any restrictions. With security tokens, that logic is much more complex. So maybe it depends on the jurisdiction of the person sending the tokens or the jurisdiction of the person receiving the tokens. It may depend on how long the person has held the tokens before trying to transfer them. Maybe it depends on some sort of token level data, like the total number of token holders and so on. So that logic is much more complex. And ERC20 doesn't really provide any facility to check whether a transfer of tokens is valid on chain without all you can really do is take a suck it and see approach where you try to execute a transfer transaction, and either it succeeds or it fails, and there's no way of checking up front whether a transfer will be valid or not on chain. So the second gap we think with the ERC20 when it comes to security tokens is around how those tokens are created or destroyed. So so ERC20 doesn't have too much to say about this, and we've seen ICOs and token contracts taking a variety of different approaches. Some initialize total supply at the final number and then transfer tokens out as they're sold. Some initialize total supply at 0 and then mint tokens as they're sold and so on. So that's, and when it comes to security tokens where the token represents some real, fractional ownership in a building or a skyscraper or something, the creation and destruction of those tokens is much more important. So what does this standard look like in code? A couple of kind of basic things to point out. One is that the ST20 standard inherits from ERC20. So any ST20 compliant token is also by definition ERC20 compliant. And the next is that it's an interface. So it doesn't say anything about how these. We'd like to, so modules have this kind of reputation system linked to which issuers have used which modules and so on. We'd like to improve that, leveraging kind of community involvement in that process. So all of our code is on GitHub, so I encourage you to come and check it out. We're running a public bug bounty at the moment, so if you're a Solidity developer, there's a kind of good motivation there to kind of come to the code base and try and find bugs. You can drop me an email at adamdosser@polymath.network if you have any technical questions or any questions at all. I'd be very happy to answer those. And we have a Gitter channel where we hang out, and very happy to kind of discuss any ideas or sort of technical questions you might have. Thank you very much.